3. We encountered almost no monsters from that point until we were done crossing the 3-mile Viridian Plains. The moment we crested the final hill, Asuna exclaimed, "Oh!" and ran a few steps forward. Before our eyes was one of the, if not the, most elegant and beautiful cities we'd seen in Aincrad thus far. It was something out of a fantasy world. Well, it was a fantasy world, but even still. The city sloped gently downward to the left, with all of the pure white stucco houses arranged on descending levels. The larger dwellings had roofs painted in pristine deep blue, and they shone golden light on the sunset like bonfires. It was stunningly beautiful. In the beta, it was made of gray stone, like the main town, so the entire place had been renovated for the official release. Beyond the bottom row of houses was a white sand beach with emerald green waters. This is what I wanted to show her, and it worked. Asuna stood still in amazement, then exhaled and murmured, "It's beautiful, just like Santorini." Santorini? Is that a real place? She looked at me, rudely, awakened from her momentary dream. Yes, it's a real place. It's a Greek island in the Aegean Sea. There's a town there called Oia. It's identical to this one. I was tempted to ask if she'd actually been there herself, but decided against it. Instead, I asked, then maybe they modeled it after that one. Is Oia famous for having casinos? I've heard that there are casino resorts in Greece, but I don't think there are any in Santorini. Again, I decided against asking her how she knew that. Instead, I shrugged amicably. Interesting. Well, look there, on the far side of town. I was pointing to an especially large building, looming all the way to the other end of the layered town. On either side of the octagonal building, with a cobalt blue roof, were towers with conical tops. It looked like a palace. That was the Volupta Grand Casino, the place that inflicted joy and despair on so many players in the beta test. That's the place? Asuna asked. I nodded. Yes, listen to me. Asuna, that casino's going to test our willpower in every way possible. Don't get too heated, but don't be too timid. Stay calm, but be bold. Yeah, I get it, she said, clamping her hand over my mouth to stop me from talking. Let's go earn 300 chips and enjoy some time at the beach, then go see Kismel. Yes, ma'am. We removed her hand from my face, then began to walk down the hill. Volupta covered about as much space as Electio, the main town of the floor, but it was at least 3 times as busy. The moment we passed through the white stucco gates, we were met by lively shouts and enticing smell from the carts, restaurants and pubs on either side of the main street. I told myself that we'd just eaten that delicious chicken, rice, and kafrau in Lectio, but that was already 6 hours ago. The unplanned hunting session had us worn down a bit, and the evening was approaching, so this was a good chance for an early dinner, I supposed. Hey, Asuna. Hey, Kirito, she replied. I held up my palm, motioning her to go first. She blinked and said, I'm sure the casino is open late. Should we eat first? Open late? It's open 24 hours. Oh. But I'm with you on eating. What should we get? What's good around here? She asked for the 2nd time that day. I had to think about it. In the beta, the majority of the time I had spent on the 7th floor was consumed by this town. But I had few memories of the food here. That was because I had been busy ignoring my earlier advice to be calm and bold, electing instead to be panicked and cowardly, generally making a mess of myself. Well, I'll let your instinct and knowledge and general luck with food lead the way here, Asuna. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean, but okay, I guess, she murmured. looking skeptical but also a bit pleased with herself. Because of the slope, the north side of Volupta was uptown, where the homes were, and the south side was downtown, where the businesses occurred. Virtually all the places to eat, however, were located along the main street that ran east to west through the center of the town. It was also arranged so that the farther you went down the street toward Volupta Grand Casino, the fancier the places got. The prices of luxury restaurant across the street from the casino were charged absolutely preposterously by the standards of the 7th floor economy. Belatedly, I started to panic at the thought of Asuna choosing that place in particular. Fortunately, her white leather boots came clicking to a stop about a third of the way down the street. With its wide-open doorway and a mix of indoor and outdoor seating, the establishment seemed more like a cafe than a restaurant. There was much clinking of utensils and glasses coming from the bright interior, and plenty of lively chatter. I didn't mind that kind of atmosphere, but it didn't strike me as Asuna's kind of thing. "Are you sure you want this one?" I asked hesitantly. A moment later, I heard an especially loud voice shout, "Don't hold back, boys! This one's on me! Order what you want!" There were cheers and whistles in response. "You're a good man." "With a spiky head of hair." 3 more large ales over here, ma'am." "Make it 4. And 2 sausage assortments." Asa and I shared a look of foreboding, then walked to the entrance and peered inside. The interior wasn't particularly large, featuring just 2 tables in the middle, but they were spacious ones, packed with players wearing familiar equipment, dark-colored iron gray and moss green. We didn't need to see the guild tag on their cursors. They belonged to one of the 2 advancement guilds, the Einkrad Liberation Squad. In the center of the table, on the left, chugging a large mug, was their spiky-haired leader, Kabao. Around him were the other principal members of the guild, like Okutan, Shikenspek, and Hokai Ikura. "How are they already here?" I muttered. Asuna sighed. "Were they already on their way here before us? Since they didn't pass the Tailwind Road, it was the only possibility. That meant ALS had stayed at an inn in Lectio last night, then left first thing in the morning to get to Volupta. Lectio was a boring town, it was true, but there were a fair number of quests to do, with some pretty good hunting areas, too. Unlike with a smaller and nimbler guild, it was too easy for the members of a larger guild to start to drift apart in terms of levels. You'd assume they would want to spend an entire day around the first town of a new floor, just working up on leveling up. So why did they rush out of the town at the first opportunity, and why were they carousing here with drinks? Neither Asuna nor I could answer that question, but just then there was another cheer from a different group behind us. We turned to look at the other side of the street. There was a restaurant there about the same size. If marginally more elegant, we trotted across the street and peered through the window because the doors were closed. "To today's victory!" said a voice. It was followed by a chorus of roaring cheers! Filling the seats around 2 large tables were a group of players wearing metallic silver and cobalt blue clothing. It was clearly the other 2 main guilds, the Dragon Knight Brigade. Standing alone in the back of the room, raising a mug of ale, was a thin man with long hair tied into a ponytail. That was their leader, Lind. Nearby, Shivata, Hafner, and 2 of his guildmates. "The DKB too? But why?" Asuna asked. "And why are they toasting and drinking at this hour?" I wondered. "He said something about today's victory. Did they mean they beat a field boss or something?" "I don't think there were any FBs worth celebrating around Volupta," I said, earning a cold look from Asuna for lazy abbreviation. She pulled back from the window. "Well, I would assume that both guilds have come here for the casino, but I can't help but wonder why they chose competing locations right across the street from each other. It would be nice to figure out what's going on. They had before they wind up dragging us into it." I had no qualms with that. We'd suffered from the DKB and the ALS battle over the guild flag on the 5th floor, and the race to beat the floor boss on the 6th floor. So if they were butting heads over some new advantage, I wanted to know what was going on before it got out of hand. She's probably here in town, too. Might as well get in touch, I muttered. Asana's face lit up as she nodded. The response to my request to meet in person came in 2 minutes later. I'm in a hot spot right now. Can it be in 15 minutes? I'll see you at a place called Pots and Pots on the southwest side of the Fountain Square. Asana read the message over and wondered, hot spot? Like for earning experience points? I doubt it's that. Then what is it? You'll have to ask her for yourself, I said, closing the window. The Fountain Square in question was located where the east-west main gate street intersected, with a grand staircase that went north-south up the hill. It was less than 100 meters away from our present spot. If we walked straight there, it could take us less than 5 minutes. So we took our time checking out the various places to eat on either side of the road, arriving at the square after another 10 minutes. The plaza was, according to my research, the 3rd best tourist spot in Volupta, following the casino and the beach. It wasn't all that large, but there was a statue of the bird-headed goddess of luck in the fountain, where pure water flooded out of the natural rock at her feet, forming a circular pool around her. When Asana got closer and peered through the metal fence around the fountain, she let out a gasp. Look at all those gold and silver coins! And as she said, there were a ton of glittering coins at the bottom of the water, shining in the light of the fires all around. If I was remembering correctly, it seemed like there were far more coins than the last time I'd seen it. Don't jump and scoop them up, or the guards will kick you out. I'm not going to do that, she protested, jabbing me in the side. It's lovely, though. It's like the Trevi Fountain. Oh, I even know that one. It's in Rome, right? Correct. I'll throw in a coin, too, said Asana, pulling 2 silver coins from her little pocket in her pouch. What? You're throwing in 200 coal? There isn't any buff from this fountain. I don't care. She glanced at me once again, then, for some reason, turned back to the fountain and tossed the coin over her shoulder. They splashed in the water and sank, wavering downward until they sat atop a pile on the bottom. You didn't have to throw both of them. 200 coal was enough for 5 extra large plates of minced chicken and rice and lectio. I thought, frustrated, but Asana just sighed and explained, at the Trevi Fountain, there's a saying that the number of coins you throw in will change the wish it grants. Oh yeah? How so? 1 coin means you'll be able to come back to Rome. 2 coins means you'll be there with that special... She stopped abruptly, clamped her mouth shut, looking away. You'll have to look it up on your own to learn the rest. How am I going to do that in Minecraft? Once we're back in the real world, you can do an internet search or whatever. It's going to be a while then, I said, thinking to myself. I'm sure I'll have forgotten about it by that point. Then I glanced at the right corner of my view. Oh, 1 more minute. Oh, that's right. We left the fountain and rushed to the southwest part of the square. There was only a sightseeing area there, however, and no shop called Pots and Pots. Nothing's here. Is it on another corner? No, hang on. I tugged the sleeve of Asana's tunic, my nose twitching. I thought I'd call a very familiar faint whiff of something tantalizing on the night breeze. This way, I think. I led us south, down the grand staircase, through the town. Despite the name, the steps were about 10 feet long and 30 feet wide, with flower beds in the middle. It was really more of a street than that happened to be made of steps. At the end, ahead of us, was a large gate, with a beach and ocean, lake, technically. Just past it, followed by the outer aperture of the floor, and the infinite sunset beyond. It was a tremendous view, but now was not the time to admire it. I headed down the staircase, pulling on Asana's sleeve all the way while then took her down a narrow side route to the right. Directly behind the sightseeing guide area from earlier, there was a little sign. In a loopy handwriting, it did appear to say Pots and Pots, but I didn't know what exactly it was supposed to mean. "Oh, this is it!" Asuna exclaimed, just as I heard some faint footsteps. A small figure came rushing up to us at high speed from the other end of the alley and came to a stop before we could even react. Sorry, 20 seconds late," said the figure, a small player in a sand gray hooded cape, the info broker, Argo the rat, bowing. Asuna yanked her sleeve out of my grasp and took a step forward. "No, it's fine," she said happily. "We just got here ourselves." "Ah, I see. It's been a while, Chan. Or has it? It has only been a night." "Ha," Argo said with a shrug. I waved my hand and said, "Hey, sorry to bother you when you were on your hotspot." "Nah, it's fine. It was the right place to quit anyways." "Did you win?" "A fair bit. I'm only doing a preliminary investigation today." It was at this point Asuna awkwardly interrupted. "Oh, when did you say it was a hotspot? You meant at the casino? Were you betting, Argo?" "No, when you put it like that way, it sounds like I was doing something criminal. Just a little gambling, more like." "That's the same thing," she said. Argo grinned and chuckled, then patted Asuna on the elbow. "Come on, don't be a stick in the mud. I gotta start selling the first issue of my 7th floor strategy guide by the end of the night. It's part of an info broker's job." Yeah, a likely story, I thought. Still, it gave me an idea. "Wait, you aren't selling 7th floor strategy guides yet? I was sure the ALS and the DKB came straight to Volupta because they'd already read your work." Argo shrugged. "Well, we ain't in the only beta testers. They must have learned about the casino on their end. Hey, you want to go inside? I'm starving." The instant she said it, my virtual stomach rumbled. Asuna nodded, deeply without a word, so we followed Argo into the mysterious Pots and Pots. Inside, it was even smaller than the chicken and rice place in Lectio, with just 4 seats at a counter. 3 of them went to Argo, Asuna, and me. There was no menu to be found on the counter. I was looking around when I heard the voice from beyond. Asuna say, "The menu's on the wall ahead of us, key boy." "What?" I looked up and saw on the back of the wall a board packed with small alphabetical letters. I'd thought it was just decoration initially, but now I could see it was a menu. Chicken and tomato, chicken and beans, chicken and mushroom? I skipped down a ways and saw that after chicken, the items were all beef and something, and then fish and something, then mutton and something, till you reach the left side, where they finished with rabbit, deer, and partridge. I know what rabbit and deer are, but what's partridge? I wondered. Fortunately, Asuna had the answer. It's a kind of bird. In Japanese, we call them mountain quail, if I remember correctly. Mountain quail. How is that different from regular quail? I don't know. Because they live in the mountains? Oh, makes sense. I focused on the menu again. There had to be 100 of the packed names on the list, but the problem was that I had no idea what sort of dish they were describing. If I ordered the partridge and beans and got a whole roasted partridge stuffed with beans, I wasn't sure my ravenous appetite would last. I couldn't ask the cook either because there was no one behind the counter. What could it mean? I'll have the beef and potatoes. I'd like the rabbit and herbs, I think. After the girls ordered, a voice from somewhere replied, Sure. I jumped up, startled, leaned over the counter from a standing position. A very short person walked out of the door on the left and stuck something round they were holding with both hands into the oven on the right. This NPC had to be the proprietor, I assumed. Their large chef hat fell over their ears, and the red scarf tied around their neck went up to their ears. So there was no way to tell for sure that they were male or female, young or old. The only thing I could be sure of was that I didn't give my order. I wasn't going to be getting any dinner. Then I'll have partridge and parsnips, I said out of sheer abandon. I didn't know what they were. Might as well choose from the bottom. The chef said, "Sure," again, and vanished into the darkness of the kitchen on the left, then reemerged with another mysterious round object that went into the oven. The actual dish itself was still a total mystery, but within a minute, an extremely fragrant and delectable smell filled the little shop, much to my delight. It certainly wasn't a bad smell, and after all, this location had been chosen by the Rat, the greatest info dealer in all of Aincrad. We could trust her taste. After another minute, the chef pulled 2 of the round things from the oven, placed them on the simple wooden plates, then added a knife, fork, spoon, and set them in front of Asana and Argo. The objects were, in fact, crisp, rounded bread rolls. They looked good, but what happened to the beef and rabbit? Asana had figured out the trick, however. She grabbed the bread without hesitation, pulled off the top, a burst of steam issuing from inside, and I murmured with admiration. 6-inch bread roll had been hollowed out and filled with a thick brown stew. "Ah, so that's what this is," I murmured. Asana gave me a funny look and said proudly, "You should have had figured it out from the name." "Huh? Pots and pots? What is it supposed to mean?" I murmured. Asana gave me a funny look and said proudly, "You should have figured it out from the name." "Huh? Pots and pots? What is that? What is it supposed to mean?" "They're pot roasts in bread bowls." "Oh, sure. I get it." "You could have warned me, rat," I thought, glaring past Asana. But Argo had already taken a bite out of her bread lid, which she dipped into the stew first. I very nearly started drooling at the sight, so it was fortunate that my golden brown bread bowl was placed before me at that moment. Asana had been considerate enough to wait for my dish to arrive, so we had said our grace first, then lifted the bread lid off the top. Inside the bread roll was a creamy white stew. I copied Argo and split the piece of bread in half, then dipped it into the stew and took a bite. It was good. Tasted like the cream stew I was used to eating in the real world, but there was more of a gamey scent to this one, with a little accent of sweetness. I finished the bread lid quickly, then picked up my spoon. The first thing to try was the mountain quail partridge, which had a rich, tender, savory taste. Then I scooped up a mysterious white ingredient. It was a semicircular piece of something that looked like a potato or a turnip. "So this is a parsnip?" I wondered to myself, giving it an appraising look. Asana appeared to be feeling sorry for me. "Did you order that without knowing what it was?" "Yeah." "It's lizard tail." "What?" I immediately held the spoon at arm's length. Of course, everything here, the partridge, Asana's rabbit, Argo's deer, were all just digital data, and lizard meat would be no different. But that didn't matter. I had standards, and they mattered to me. "What kind of combination is quail and lizard?" I muttered to myself. Asana and Argo burst into laughter. "You're amazing, Key Boy. It's always worth teasing you. That's a vegetable." "What? Really?" "Yes. In Japan, we call it a sugar carrot, or American parsley," Asana explained smugly. I gave her a sidelong glance, then popped the white object into my mouth. It had a crispy crunch like a carrot, but with its own flavor and sweetness. It was odd, but I didn't mind it. "I can see why they call it a sugar carrot," I commented once I saw it a piece. "Technically, though, it's a relative of celery," Asana pointed out. "As long as it's not lizard tail, I don't care." With that, I started to eat the dish in earnest. I had only gotten 2 or 3 bites in when Argo spoke up. "Do you want to trade?" Asuna and I shared a look, then we both indicated we would. First, my bread bowl made its way over to Argo, then Argo's dish went to Asuna, then Asuna slid over to me. This one was rabbit and herb, if I recalled correctly. The texture was meatier than the partridge, but it didn't have a funny aftertaste, and the blend of herbs gave it a stimulating complementary flavor. Once we'd eaten another third of the stews, we slid them over again. Argo's beef and potatoes had that classic comforting taste. The combination of a large, juicy meat and steamed potato was supremely satisfying. Once I'd reached the bottom of the bread bowl, I asked Asuna quietly, "Are we allowed to eat the bread it's in too?" "Why not? We got knives." "Oh, it's for cutting the bread." I picked up the serrated knife and sliced the empty bread bowl in 2, then into 2 smaller pieces. I popped one of the stew-soaked bits into my mouth. I was happily chewing away while Asuna cut hers into more manageable pieces. Then she asked, "Which was your favorite stew, Kirito?" Well, they were all good. The mountain quail and lizard, sugar carrot, was new and interesting. The rabbit and herb, bold and stimulating. While the beef and potato was a safe and delicious. But if I had to choose one as the winner, I'd say I'd go with the rabbit. Oh, really? Why? I think I like the texture best. Interesting. I wasn't sure exactly what she found interesting, but she nodded anyways and stuck her fork into one of the nearly cut squares of bread. Once we were done, we left the building. Volupta was in the night mode now. I inhaled the soothing breeze coming up from the beach and stretched luxuriously. That was good. Thanks for showing us this place, Argo. Right outside the square isn't where you'd think to look, huh? I'll give you that one for free. Hey, thanks, I said with a grimace. Asuna suddenly gasped. "Oh! What is it?" "I feel like we weren't contacting Argo to catch dinner with her." The rat and I both gasped, too. "Ow!" We just paid for the meal at Pots and Pots and left, so it would be embarrassing to go back inside, but it felt like a waste of time to go searching for a cafe to sit in. Instead, we decided to register in an inn. The inns in Volupta were clustered on the south side of the town, closer to the beach. But the finest place of all was upstairs at the casino. We needed casino chips to stay there, though, rather than coal. So we strolled down the great stairs, turning right when we reached the fancy gate at the bottom, which was guarded by watchmen. Once you were this close to the beach, you couldn't actually see it anymore, because of the tall stone walls blocking access. "I wonder if the people who live here complain about the fact that the beach is exclusively for tourists who gamble at the casino," Asuna murmured. I was going to say that they were just NPCs, but decided against it. Gizmel, the dark elf, wasn't the only NPC we'd met that had advanced conversational skills and emotional intelligence on the level of a human being. Maya, Theano, Bohrum were recent examples of the same on the 6th floor. Not all NPCs were like that, but somewhere in Volupta were probably some NPCs with the same level of artificial intelligence. I'd prefer not to see any NPCs die on this floor, I thought, just as Argo answered Asuna's question. They might. The whole town's more or less ruled over by a gigantic casino." Ruled over? That sounds ominous. "There are company towns in the real world too, right? Volupta's economy is run by tourists who come up for the casino, so the residents can't really complain. They close off the beach." Asuna glanced up at the stone wall to our left. "When you put it that way, I almost feel bad about the idea of relaxing and having fun on the beach." "Aha! So you two are off to the beach, huh? Well, now I feel it's bad for saying that." "No, actually, I'm glad you told us," Asuna admitted. I watched her closely then and asked, "So, should we forget about the beach?" No, she said, to my surprise. On the 6th floor, we learned that this world often doesn't work the way its background suggests it should. I've decided to make up my mind based on what I see and hear for myself, and that means ignoring what you've told us, unfortunately. No worries. I always gotta be on my toes so I don't just swallow everything I hear through the grapevine, too. Oh, my recommendations of this place, Argo said, pointing out at the 4-story inn up ahead. She grinned and added, but of course, A-chan will want to check it out for herself before she decides to stay there.